It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and my colleague, Dr. Thomas Strasser, from the University College of Teachers Education in Vienna, Austria. Dr. Strasser is a professor of language teaching methods and technology for the language students, and he's had administrative roles at that university as well. He is here for a very short, I would say short week, as a recipient of an Erasmus Plus grant that we have a partnership actually managed by Todd with his university between UNM and the Teachers College in Vienna. So with that, I would like to say welcome to you. We're happy to have you, and it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Paul, for having me. Thanks, Todd, for the organization of this event. Thanks for having me here. It's great to be part of the University of New Mexico, at least for 1 week,
Yes.
so to say, right? And I really have to say what I really appreciate is the hospitality. And thanks, Paul, again, for showing me around, showing me like the cultural versatility of this area, which is, of course, a very, very important aspect for me as a language teacher as well. And today I would like to talk about artificial intelligence in foreign language teaching. And first of all, I really have to say, you don't have to be afraid. And I would like to start with an analogy by a famous band. You probably know Jamiroquai, kids of the 90s, no? And Jamiroquai, JK, sang about, "I'm going deeper underground. There's too much panic in this town." And I really like these lyrics because they can be nicely compared to the whole panic when it comes to AI. And that's why I always say, I'm going deep L underground. You probably know the machine translation software, and I can see some similarities when it's all about artificial intelligence. But for me, one of the most important things as a language teacher is you don't have to be afraid of artificial intelligence. And this is what this whole talk is going to be about. I want to show you the methodological and mainly pedagogical potentials of artificial intelligence in language learning and teaching. I think one of the most prominent examples how AI works is the following one. We've been struggling with this kind of scenario here, probably you know it. And that's actually the most basic way to differentiate whether you're a computer or a human. So actually this test here is one of the first AI-powered processes, performances, where Google sees whether you're human or not. But the thing is, I don't want to focus too much on the technological determinism here. I want to show you a little video of an AI-powered day in the life of an EFL teacher. And I tried to film myself a bit using as many AI-powered tools as possible in my every. So I want to show you a video, an AI-powered video in a regular life of an EFL teacher or also ELT professor. Have a look at this video. So the big question is, artificial intelligence in language teaching, is it a fact or a fiction? And as you can see in this example, I'm constantly using so-called narrow AIs. That means technologies that are good in doing one thing. For example, Grammarly, DeepL, or automatic speech recognition. And I think this is the most important aspect we have to consider when talking about AI in language teaching. We have to focus on narrow, weak AIs, not on the superhuman power AIs. We really have to focus on those tools that can be methodologically exploited. And that's why I would like to give you a short overview of AI in language teaching and in general. Probably you know AI has had a very, very long history. For more than 70 years, people, scientists, researchers have focused on the whole idea of using artificial intelligence. And one of the most important tests you probably know is the Turing test. And the Turing test, created by a researcher called Turing, says if a machine can trick a human into thinking it was a human, then it has some kind of intelligence. And that is actually the most basic definition of AI, which I would like to elaborate on, especially in the context of foreign language teaching. So I'm not going into depth about all the technological features of artificial intelligence. But we all agree, all researchers agree, when it comes to AI, we need data. Data is the new oil. Forget Bitcoin and anything like that. Data is the new oil. We need data. Data is used in order to train certain models. We need the data. The machine gets the data, learns, improves, adapts the data, and tries to improve constantly. And the machine learns by itself. And when we speak of language learning, it might be an interesting thought how we can possibly use these algorithms, these technologies, in order to improve your grammar skills, lexical skills, language learning skills. So you're all language learners, and why should you not use AI-powered technologies? But the thing is, it's not that easy, of course. Because when it comes to linguistics, of course, we do know that there is an approach called natural language processing. I'm not going to go into detail, but what is very important and interesting here is that the whole approach of NLP, natural language processing, is extremely important, especially for machine translation like DeepL or speech recognition. Who uses Siri or Alexa speech recognition technology? Only 2 or 3, maybe 4, 5, okay. Is it good? Does it work? Is it flawless or not?
Not.
It works? Yeah. Especially for the most basic things, it's perfect, right? Good. So AI is there. And of course, in everyday life, there is AI. We all know the whole thing about face recognition, CCTV. We all know the things about health, lifestyle. Who's got a smartphone and a smartwatch? Yeah. Who uses the smartphone or the smartwatch for health issues or health development and health surveillance? Yeah. And this is the cool thing about AI. AI can predict even your health status. So my watch keeps telling me that my HRV status, heart rate variability status, is going down due to jet lag all the time. And it's so interesting to see. When I started in Vienna, the HRV was very high, and when I arrived in New Mexico, it got low. It's got nothing to do with New Mexico, of course. It's just the jet lag, of course. But what I'm saying is, my watch predicts that when I'm used to this sleeping patterns, my HRV will go up. And this, of course, is an interesting approach also for language learning. Can we possibly predict your learning outcome, your language skills using various technologies? This is, of course, an interesting question. And especially when it comes to language learning, we know audio recognition is quite a proper tool if we use Google Translate and Siri. But of course, and since I grew up in humanities, it's my duty to talk about moral implications of artificial intelligence as well. And we do know that there are certain examples where AI has gone wrong dramatically. For example, a lot of examples are, for example, there's a face recognition tool that falsely arrests people. Police uses AI face recognition, but sometimes the wrong people get arrested. It's problematic. We use AI recruitment tools, and sometimes they have a strong bias against women, statistically seen, and this is, of course, extremely problematic. Certain international insurance companies charge higher fees based on the AI for people of color. Can you imagine? We have to fight that, and it's our duty also as language teachers and pedagogues, to really tackle this issue that the machine can be wrong. Language learning is not just the process of learning words, phrases, grammar. It's also a course, and it's also an issue of how we can culturally try to reflect on these morally disturbing performances. And seen from a language point of view, we have several learning theories in language learning. And I'm not going into detail of Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. I'm not going to talk about Krashen's input hypothesis. But what I want to emphasize here is that we can use these learning theories and combine them with artificial intelligence. And I would like to give you practical examples, of course, as well. So, the main thing why I'm interested in artificial intelligence tools is the aspect of practice. You learn a language, you have to practice that. And we all know that sometimes practicing a language is not always good fun. especially when it comes to certain grammatical drills, when it comes to so-called remedial drills. We practice over and over again. And sometimes this can be quite boring, but on the other hand, boring doesn't always have to be something inferior, don't get me wrong. I sometimes truly believe in the fact that a solid instructivist approach of teaching a language can do you some good, compared to the communicative approach as well. But the thing is, the reason why I think here AI can help is the following. Have a look at this chart here. You all know those language learning apps. Who uses a language learning app, an AI-powered language learning app like Duolingo, Babbel, using the chatbots, right? They are all AI-powered. There's an algorithm behind it. And mainly you use it for vocabulary, right? Right? Speaking, unfortunately, is a bit of like the Achilles heel when it comes to AI and language learning because it's extremely difficult to interact with chatbots, right? But what I can tell you is, especially when it comes to learning words and phrases and grammar, AI can possibly help you with certain kind of learning procedures, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Have a look at DeepL. Who uses DeepL? Very nice, good. Not more? Who doesn't know DeepL? You don't have to be embarrassed. Okay, probably the language learning... Sorry?
What is it?
I'm going to show you. Probably the Language Learning Center is going to kill me for that because that's going to help them like immediately translate phrases in no time. No, I'm just kidding. DeepL is an AI-powered translation website that translates your input into the given language. But it does not only do that, it does this in real-time live, considering certain contexts. So it also includes pragmatics and also culturally relevant information. So it does not do a plain one-by-one translation. It also tries to consider context. And I would like to show you this in the following example, where I'm typing in a German sentence. You don't even have to know the German sentence. But what you can do, see here is, the system automatically creates a grammatically, lexically, and pragmatically coherent text live. So even if you change a couple of things, the algorithm, the AI, tries to produce a solid sentence, which meets the context. So here, it's a formal sentence, it's business English, and it's a formal language input, and the system automatically recognizes this as something formal. And this is where AI comes into play. We can use one-on-one translation, but the thing about AI is that the system knows which context it is. So it also
can't do dates.
Sometimes, of course, that's right. Here in this context, that's a nice thing. But that's a culturally specific thing you mentioned here, ma'am. And I totally agree with you that sometimes the machine cannot do it all the time. But I give you one example. You probably know, do you know a spritzer here? No, yes?
The carbonated water.
Yeah, could you explain that? So a spritzer, in general in Austria, a spritzer is wine with sparkling water. Yeah? And the system does not translate the word spritzer into English because the system knows that spritzer is a typically Austrian thing, and that's why it doesn't translate it. Yeah? There's a dessert which is called Kaiserschmarrn. You probably know that, next to Wiener Schnitzel. Yeah? But Kaiserschmarrn is a dessert, right? And literally translated, it would mean emperor's nonsense. Yeah? But DeepL does not translate that as emperor's nonsense, but he leaves it as Kaiserschmarrn because the system automatically realizes that this is a cultural thing. And that's why AI might be quite interesting, also in order to avoid cultural, let's say, infelicities or sometimes clashes that because of pragmatic failure. So seen from a linguistic point of view, these technologies are quite interesting. Please try out deepl.com. It's free in general, and it really helps you coming up with solid translations based on really cool AI algorithms. Another tool I would like to present is otter.ai. Otter AI is a speech recognition tool And the cool thing about Otter AI is the basic account is free. And what it can do is, you just talk and record yourself. And I would like to demonstrate that live. So, might be that the internet is on. So, it's free, you have to register. And the cool thing about Otter is, imagine you're doing a lecture or you're preparing a presentation. You as language learners, you have to present, right? You have to practice the skill of speaking. And here, AI might help you. Why? Because what I'm doing here is, I'm clicking record. So I logged in again, and now I click record. And I'm waiting a bit. So what this system actually does is quite cool because it automatically transcribes the things I'm saying. I can speak more quickly, I can speak more slowly, I can even try to come up with an accent without being like incorrect, you know what I mean? And the thing is, you can do live sessions and the system automatically transcribes all the things you're saying right now. And this is quite cool, especially for language learning processes, because what you can do afterwards, after your presentation, if you've presented in front of your colleagues, you can give feedback on the written transcript. But it also has nice inclusive aspects, especially for the hearing impaired. A lot of conferences already use Otter AI, that the keynote speaker is automatically being transcribed live. And this is based on an AI algorithm. Look at this, and if we check it out now, you know, if you're a language teacher, you can do this in class, and then you can analyze this text, whether this is correct or not. But what I can read here is that it's quite solid, right? Some of you might think, oh my goodness, that's quite scary or spooky. The others say, wow, that's a game changer, right? It does not replace the process of learning a language, of course, and this is one of my main messages today. AI does not replace the language teacher, of course, because it still needs the culturally aware and competent language teacher that tries to put this text into context, gives feedback on grammatical infelicities, and so on and so forth. But the nice thing is, you can even practice basic shopping dialogues in the classroom. Two people sit in front of the class and they practice a shopping dialogue, and then it's automatically being transcribed. And you can print it out, you can even highlight all the stuff, and the cool thing is you can even collaborate with this tool. So more of your colleagues, peers, can collaboratively work on this text, which I think is quite cool. And as a teacher, you can go here, and then you somehow mark phrases, and then you talk about this phrase, for example, where you say, Tom, I really like this sentence here because you used a lot of conjunctions, and so on and so forth. You can also do this on a very, very basic level. So I would suggest the next time you prepare yourself for a presentation or something like that, even if it's just very basic English or another language, use this tool, and then afterwards you see what you have actually said. It's a super nice transcription tool, and this is a so-called narrow AI. This tool is good in doing one particular thing. Right? And why is it good? Because it uses all the linguistic corpora and data, and the more, of course, I provide input. So this input, of course, is used for the machine in order to improve, of course. This is what we have to be aware of. All the things we provide is used for the machine in order to get better and better, right? And I really like Otter AI. It's a very cool tool, I would say. Right, let's continue a bit. So for the language learning context, this is a cool tool because it gives you real-life transcription. It's an interesting backup for your presentations, and of course, you can discover phonetics and phonology in real time, more or less, so to say. You can work with all those interesting features as well. But we have to be honest, there's also limitations of this AI. Sometimes mispronounced words are not automatically corrected or something like that, which brings us to the question, what is our ELT standard, right? This is a rather political question, we cannot discuss that here, but in general, the thing is sometimes the system does not recognize some kind of like flaws, so to say, right? But here the focus is anyways on fluency, and I love this tool because it's a super cool tool in order to improve fluency rather than accuracy. I mean, of course you can work with accuracy, here as well. I don't know if you tried it with a thick, I don't know, southern accent, if it works or not. You can try this out yourselves at home, right? And then probably tell me later on. Another tool I would like to present, because I told you I want to provide practical examples as well, is a tool I use for my research. It's a tool which is called My Simple Show, and it's an AI-powered explainer video creator. So what does that mean? This tool is for free, the basic account, and what it does is, you as a language learner or teacher, you type in a manuscript into the machine, and the machine automatically creates an explainer video. I will present that in real time. I hope it works. Yeah, the time management is quite good, so we'll do this now. So I've logged on to My Simple Show. Let's see whether I'm on or not. Yeah. So that's My Simple Show. And you can also switch to English, of course, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm creating a new video. So, and I call this video, I don't know, Tom in New Mexico. It should be an English video. And then I'm done. What does that mean? I'm done. The only thing I have to provide now is my text. So I have to type in a text. And the cool thing here is you can structure your videos. You can come up with, I don't know, some kind of like comparing two options. You can explain even a mathematical formula. You can explain a historic event. You can even come up with pros and cons, for example, Life in the City pro and con. And you can even interpret literature or movies. It's super cool. It gives you the template, what you should type in, right? I'm going to use a blank template. I'm going to produce an explainer video about Tom in New Mexico. I'm going to start with a title. Tom in the USA. Yeah, and then I'm going to start with a story. 5 days, it's been 5 days now? 5 days ago, Tom landed in Albuquerque. Landed in Albuquerque. He was so happy. Unfortunately, his luggage did not arrive. What? It's a true story. But Tom was happy to be here. Anyway. Because you can talk about, stereotypes when it comes to the choice of images. You can talk about the fact that, hey, this is not Albuquerque. So guess what? You discuss that in the language classroom, and then you just pick another picture. You have a choice of various pictures. So this is also a built-in picture dictionary, which I think is extremely cool. You can even upload an image of Albuquerque, right? It's totally up to you. Or the learner has to think, okay, I don't know which city that is. Seattle, right? And then you can talk about that, right? And then he said, okay, at least we're going to use that image, right? And the nice thing is, you can change the words and the images, right? So you can see, if you click on that, if you want to have Tom popping up here, then you're going to pick Tom, right? If you want 5 days ago, in a text, then you click here. Hold on. And then you can write text, and then you can also write down 5 days ago, right? If you want to visualize the signal words, because we all know we have to use past and simple when there's a goal, for example, right? So you see, when you're a trained language specialist, or a learner even, it's not just a nice bling bling tool that does the magic. It really takes your efforts in order to nicely combine visual input with technology. And this tool is really cool. And that's why I thought, and I want to go back to practice. Remember when I talked about the importance of practice? How could you possibly use this tool in order to improve language learning practice? And one of the big flaws of learning technologies in language learning is that sometimes there is no empirical data to measure whether this tool really helps you improving your language skills. And that's why, for me as a researcher, it's extremely important also to measure that. And that's why I would like to show you one or two empirical data, what I find out. So the thing is, I thought to myself, how could you possibly use my simple show to present grammar? I mean, who loves grammar? Yeah, I have to say, I love it as well, to be honest, right? I love mixed tenses and all these kinds of things. But the thing is, in general, we know that learning grammar can be quite exhausting, and sometimes it can be quite monotonous. Not all the time, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be superficial here, right? Because there's lovely communicative grammar teaching approaches anyways. But I thought I'd produce an AI explainer video explaining the difference between present perfect simple and past simple. I'm well aware of the fact that sometimes in the States you rather use past tense, right? Is that right? Did you ever go to the cinema? Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can't overgeneralize that, but for example, in Austria, that's a big thing to differentiate between present perfect simple, yeah, and past tense. Have you ever eaten frog's legs? You would never ever say, did you ever eat frog's legs in Austria, for example, but that is just a thing, yeah? But the thing is, it's in the curriculum, right? And we have to teach it, and the kids have tests concerning that. And that's why I thought I produce an AI video that shows the difference between past and simple and present perfect. And then I'm going to do a research where I want to find out whether the students who watched the video or the students who got the teacher's instruction did better, right? And that was the video. It was a series of videos. I just would like to show you the video. So this is the video I showed to the students in a Viennese high school. Let's start with an explanation of the present perfect. So that was the video I produced with my simple show. So I just typed in the text and the system automatically produced that with some adjustments, of course.
Explainer video number 2.
And that's my voice. You can even record yourself, right?
But
Chapter
that's the
1.
premium.
Awareness.
With your own voice.
Teachers account. It's free for teachers and educators. You can apply for that for free.
So far,
Is it
she has
British?
watched Titanic 10
No.
times.
Sorry?
Which country?
It's European, German.
Anna has just watched Titanic for the 11th time. She's a bit crazy about this film. The big question is, how many times has she watched other films so far? The surprising answer, she hasn't watched any other films up until now. It has only been Titanic. Can you believe it? Chapter 2, explaining. Let's talk about the present perfect now. In general, the present perfect is formed with to have and the so-called past participle. For example, Anne has watched Titanic 11 times. However, sometimes there are so-called irregular past participles or third forms that do not follow the rule. Pro tip, just learn them by heart.
Simple as that.
The negation in the present perfect works like this. Subject plus have or has plus not plus verb in the third form. Check out this sentence here. If we want to form questions in the present perfect, we do it like this.
And so on and so forth. So you get the image, right? You get the picture. And the thing is, I wanted to show these videos to over 80 students, grade 7 high school. They're 13 years old in Austria. That's their 3rd year of English. And then the other group, the control group, right, got the teacher instruction based on this manuscript of this grammar instruction. And that was interesting for me, and I would like to show you some of my results in research, because for me, one of the most important things is I want to show, empirically show, what are the effects or not the non-effects of such technologies, right? And here's the thing. So I had 2 focus groups and 2 control groups. So the one group was taught by the teacher, classic grammar instruction by the teacher. That was the control group. And the focus group was taught with this series of videos, right? So I wanted to know, right, and that was my zero hypothesis. That was like the no-go hypothesis. that AI-assisted explainer videos do not create significantly better learning effects, yeah, compared to regular teacher input. So that was the hypothesis I wanted not to happen, so to say. The hypothesis I was looking for was seeks to empirically demonstrate that after the exposure of an AI video, these students performed better. How did I measure that? I used a pre-test and a post-test, a regular grammar close exercise, right? Where they have to fill in present tense, simple, and past tense. But before I did the pre and post-test, I did a standardized language level test to show what is their level, right? This is very important. And hypothesis 2 was, and now it's getting interesting, learners with a lower language level based on this standardized test achieve significantly better after the AI exposure compared to the teacher instruction. And let's see what the results are. These are just numbers, just to show you it was about a sample rate of 76 students. I used the pre-test, post-test. I used analysis of variance. And the thing is, this is just the design. It was a 3-month research design, but that's not too important now. What I want to show you now is hypothesis 1. Did they significantly perform better, the AI group? And what you can see here is no. So the AI tool did not make the learners better compared to the teacher. For me, quite a frustrating, on the other hand, quite cool insight, because I'm a language teacher myself, right? So what we can see here is that probably it's not a big difference to use technology. So what's the whole use of using technology then, I ask myself. And here it gets interesting, because if you have a look at the pre and post tests, there was one class that did not do well in the standardized test. They rather were poor in the standardized language level test, and they significantly improved after the AI exposure. Have a look here. So the group with the lower level standardized tests did better, significantly better after AI exposure compared to the group that was bad and had the teacher instruction. I will talk about the limitations of the studies anyways, because you might ask yourself.
Were you the teacher? I mean, depends a lot on the teacher.
That is what I want to say. I'm going to talk about this limitation, man, because you're totally right. So the thing is, the two groups watched the series of videos and just watched them in the classroom. And the others were taught by the teacher, where the teacher had to stick to a rather similar manuscript compared to the video, right? And this can be a limitation, of course, because the teacher cannot fully exploit his skills because he had to stick to the manuscript. I'm being fair here, but for me, in terms of similar chances for language learners, this seems to be quite interesting, that obviously the use of technology can sometimes improve the rather low-level students. That is at least an interesting, foundation. I'm not saying that this is like state of the art right now, but the thing is, due to statistical methods like ANOVA, analysis of variance, we can say that there was a significant improvement. I'm going to skip the figures here because I'm going to come to my conclusion now when it comes to AI. So the limitations of this study, of my research, are quite clear. Probably a larger sample would have been nice. Probably also seen from a socio-demographic point of view, I could have done this research in various schools, in various districts, in various urban contexts. And what I did not do, because I didn't have the time, is I did not do post-interviews with those people, with those students who did extremely well after the KI exposure, what they really liked, right? So I suppose that they really liked the multimodal, multimedia effects, that they liked the images, that they liked the movements, and they liked the ubiquitous aspect, because they could watch the video all the time, because they could watch their videos on the smartphone as well, on the tram, on the bus, wherever they want to. And this is, of course, a nice USP for such technology, but now I agree. The fourth point, which is, of course, quite critical, is that it's rather biased lab conditions, because the teacher was standing there and more or less reading and teaching his script. And which language teacher just uses a script and explaining grammar? I have to say that this is, of course, a biased lab condition, and it's a limitation of this study, but nevertheless, I want to emphasize the potentials here of Otter AI or here of My Simple Show, it can act as a so-called assistive multimodal instructional technology. The focus is on assistive, supportive. It supports the teacher. It does not replace the teacher. Why does it not replace the teacher? Because sometimes such tools like My Simple Show save a lot of time. So the teacher just types in the manuscript, has a nice video, and saves some time so that he can show the video to the students, that he can really use the time in the continuous lessons for interaction, face-to-face interaction, describing or explaining grammar phenomena and grammar problems. So I see this tool as a nice way to really save some time for the teacher, that he or she, the teacher, can talk about grammar in the classroom, whereas before the actual lesson, the students can watch these videos. They don't have to watch these videos in the classroom, I think. And of course, it's a super nice tool as it is ubiquitous, that they can use this My Simple Show with their smartphone, with their laptop, everywhere they want to. They don't need to have the regular continuous lessons to watch that, right? So it's a bit of a flipped classroom approach. You tell your learners, watch the AI-powered video before the actual lesson, have a look at it, and then we're going to talk about the problems and about the questions, right? And this is where the real language teacher comes into play again. So you see where I want to go. It's not about a replacement. Why wouldn't we use AI-powered tools in order to support the communicative language teaching classroom? Let's use these instructive tools so that we can later focus on communicative approaches. But I'm fair and I'm honest and I'm not naive. Technologies do have flaws. AI still has flaws when it comes to translations. Have a look here. For those multilingual people of you. Do you get the joke here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah? So, you see, sometimes the machine is not too good, because here the machine does not more or less contextualize the image here, right? Another thing is, a classic in Spanish, right? Still happens. And that's why it needs the culturally aware or culturally competent or interculturally competent language teacher. So you see, for me, this is clear. It still needs pragmatics here, and sometimes the machine cannot do that. Another thing why I think the machine is stupid, Amazon recommends my own books to me, right? So obviously the machine does not understand who I am, right? So again, another example. And of course, this is not a really serious, this is like not an academic example, a part in the language here, but the thing is, that's the whole idea. We as language teachers have to really focus on these aspects when it comes to also ethics using certain technologies. And I would like to conclude with a more serious note, of course. And what I truly believe in is that when we use artificial intelligence in the language, foreign language classroom, let's talk about a division of labor. Let's not talk about a replacement of the teacher. And I truly believe in the fact when it comes to empathy and human interaction, it still needs the teacher. That sounds a bit naive, of course, but on the other hand, it needs the communicative language teacher with all those skills the machine does not have, especially when it comes to project, task-based oriented language learning and teaching scenarios. But when it comes to the delivery of personalized content, for example, if you want to have a spot-on grammar video for this class, because the class struggles with present simple or present perfect and past tense, you can use tools like My Simple Show in order to automate those processes. I think it's about automatization concerning these scenarios. And finally, I would like to conclude with one video because it nicely shows that still the machine is not flawless. And when it comes to language teaching, sometimes let's get rid of technology, because when it comes to the whole quality of an interactional, communicative language teaching classroom, simplicity is king and queen.
Here's Jess.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So wonderful, wonderful information, and I've learned so many new things.
Thank you.
We have time for some questions or comments, so I just leave it to anyone for that.
Yes?
Yeah, so I had a question. You mentioned this earlier, but one of the concerns with AI is that the data it's trained on is entered by humans who have biases, and that's why we see these lack of recognition of different accents or different genders, or even in the last example, people whose mouths are shaped in different ways.
Yeah.
And so, obviously we do a lot of this in the classroom anyway, sort of reinforcing the standard, saying certain accents are more acceptable than others.
Right.
But, could you talk about, given that a lot of this AI, how can we use AI without reinforcing this when it doesn't recognize different types of accents?
Right. The thing is, it's a very good question, and I've been struggling with this question for quite some time. The thing is, the AI generally deals with standardized data / standardized language, right? And that's sometimes the problem that very often the AI just considers RP or Standard American, for example, as the status quo, which I think is problematic, but I see potentials and challenges here that there it needs the language teacher to critically reflect on these situations that say, hey, it's not more than just Standard American and RP, for example, and that's why it needs the linguistically and culturally trained language teacher to say, hey, the machine is not right here, because it's not said that Standard American is like the only language that is spoken out there, for example. So I think we can use these tools in order to also debunk the myth of linguistic imperialism, for example. I'm speaking of English as a lingua franca, for example, where there's a lot of certain peculiarities how things are pronounced, for example, and that's why I love the whole technology. But I tell you what, the more data it gets, the better it will become also with those standards and varieties, because I tell you what, most of these companies do not hire IT specialists anymore, they hire corpus linguists. Corpus linguists, for example, in order to really cover the whole range of various standards, which is, of course, quite a mission impossible, to be honest. And that's why, because you can't cover all the varieties in the whole wide world. Especially when it comes to English, it's probably a bit easier because the data is there. But take, for example, Roman languages. We don't have that much data, for example. That's why it's so extremely important to have a trained teacher that tells you, hey, there's various varieties as well, right? Does that answer your question a bit?
Yeah, I just wonder if there still is a tendency to assume that what comes up on that screen is correct.
Right, so that's why it needs the teacher to say, hey, not everything you see here is correct. So we're talking about self-responsive digital literacy here as well. So what I truly believe in is when it comes to all these technological discussions, we also need a language learner that is critically reflective of various media. And this got nothing to do only with linguistic varieties. It's got something to do with also manipulative information and stuff like that. We see this in everyday society, that of course a lot of data and a lot of information is manipulative. So what we need is probably a learner that is also digitally literate. But that takes not only linguistic skills, that takes skills concerning how to check sources, that needs skills how to really linguistically behave on the internet, because writing my friend on WhatsApp is a totally different thing than writing my professor. So I give you this anecdote. I often have my students, also when I'm in the States, they write, hi, did you already check my paper? Right? They don't even write, hello, Mr. Strasser, have you possibly checked or graded my paper? And this is actually a no-go in Austria, that you just write your professor, hi, what up? Yeah, did you already mark my grade? And this is what I mean with also how to know how to digitally communicate in various channels.
I have one question.
Yes?
If it's not perfect, so why you're using the visuals or all? If you're saying it's not perfect,
Yeah.
so why to use it?
Because I want to tackle the problem also of the so-called machine bias. I want to show my students that the machine does not always take the proper picture. And especially when it comes to visualization, there's a lot of stereotypes in it. So I give you an example. Sometimes when you type into my simple show teacher, you often see a lady in a short skirt, right? And wearing having some kind of a stick in her hands. This is kind of problematic, right? Because it's stereotypical. And that's why I love the tool, because I talk about this choice of images with my language learners. And we have the greatest discussions, not only about lexical and grammatical features, we have the greatest discussions about sociocultural implications of a language learning process. And that's why I'm a big believer of, sometimes I think it's cool that the machine is not perfect. And that's why it still needs the trained teacher. Yeah? It's not about the optimization of language learning. It's about the critical reflection of learning a language, so to say.
I have a question.
Yes?
I haven't heard, and also I haven't used DeepL.
Yeah?
So Google is very popular nowadays. So in America also.
Yeah?
I always use Google, and also sometimes I use Google Translate.
Yes?
And also, which one is trustworthy, the DeepL or Google?
So both work quite well, but to be honest, DeepL focuses more on a wider linguistic corpus and tries to work with people that really focus on corpus linguistics. So I would say DeepL is the more sophisticated AI-powered translation service, but I'm not saying Google is worse, but because if you compare it, it's still the same. But what I really like about DeepL is that it also includes pragmatic implications. So that means those cultural contexts, those situation-based contexts. So try it out, DeepL, but it's definitely both are trustworthy.
Thank you.
DeepL based on Linguist.
They grab all the data. They grab like Lingui and all those translation applications. They grab the data from the web, right?
Okay.
Yeah, but they're not related or any kind of associated with it.
Because maybe that was just your take.
Yeah, but try it out. And especially try it out with cultural translation words that do not work in your language, for example. Then you immediately see it, right?
Kind of following up on that, I'm wondering, because one of the limitations of Google is a little bit country dependent.
Yeah.
So if I go to China, Google will not work there anyways.
True.
So
Yeah.
maybe DeepL it could be a solution.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
If it works.
Sorry, sir, and I don't know. Sir.
Anyway, I'm from a totally different department. I'm from nutrition.
Cool.
They send out the email, and I saw that you're from Vienna. My family comes from Austria, so I came.
Oh, really? Where exactly?
Well, actually, I'm from Slovakia, but my grandmother's last name was Steinacher.
Okay, right,
They were from
okay.
Linz.
Ah,
Anyway,
nice, yeah.
Anyway, I have to say, you're right. People are afraid of AI. The problem in computer technology is that as the computers get faster and faster, on the other hand, the software gets so humongous that I'm sitting here literally in awe of the human brain. The human brain is able to understand all the dialects, understand the context, understand the slang.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
This is literally. I think we will never reach the human brain.
Yeah, right. I can totally hear you what you want to say here, and I totally agree but the thing is, I think it's about coexistence.
Oh no,
right?
and I'm fine with it. You know,
Yeah, that's why I'm totally backing you up.
What is possible.
Yeah.
But in the end, I have to say what the human brain can do, and so small.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
True. So
fascinating, right?
Fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
I was just curious, I think I know the answer. You were mentioning earlier, like a recipe doesn't get its names translated because it doesn't make any sense. Would we have to rely on, do you think, on the instructors for like Heimat, which doesn't translate super well into English, but it's a really important word in German. So would you rely on the instructor for that?
Yeah, you definitely have to rely on the instructor here because especially when you talk about like various instructions and also like recipes and stuff like that, that is like culturally. It can't be more culturally connotated, right? And that's why it needs the instructor here, definitely, because we do not consider AI translation as a word-by-word translation, but believe it or not, by the year of 2023, about 43% of the general market potential volume money will be invested in AI in education. So even if we like that or not, we have to somehow follow or critically reflect on the market needs. I'm not saying that we should always follow the market needs, but as long as we're not critically reflecting on these technologies, I think we might get lost, especially in the language learning context where you have to get your diplomas quite quickly. We all know where this is going to end, that you're going to do your language test online or with an AI, and then you're all set. And this is what, of course, we have to critically reflect on, because sometimes, of course, learning a language is not only getting the grades, but this is a very complex discussion here, of course. But thank you for your question, of course. Sir?
Yeah, more than a question, is like a comment. When you were comparing like the teacher and the artificial intelligence, I saw like the potential more than the errors or mistakes of it. And I was thinking about how cheap it is to spread, for example, information to places where education is not like access for many people. So to develop like a program and to take it to places, because I come from Mexico and there are like many places where education is not like achievable. So thinking about like a program that can introduce kids, for example, to the English language.
I really like your comment here, because this is what was so important for me. The question with the lower level language students did better after using free technology, and this is like also like an approach of, you know, let's say educational justice / social justice to some terms, right? And that's why I really believe in the fact that sometimes technology also has a very supportive / inclusive factor and implications. And if we get rid of this whole technological determinism, we're not talking about robots. That's something people always mix up, you know, humanoids, robots with AIs all the time. Yeah, it's like, the thing is, let's focus on narrow AIs that could possibly support or reach areas where infrastructure might not be that good. So the aspect of social justice or educational justice is an extremely interesting one, and that's why I would like to stick to that, to my research, and like to build up on that. So thanks for the input here, because I totally agree with that.
I have one more question. I mean, so another thing I've noticed with AI, you know, have a strong monolingual bias in the sense that you can either say something, you know, in English or in German, but not in both together. And or you know, English or Arabic, but not both together. And we know a lot of multilingual speakers, you know, don't necessarily stick to what's considered one language. And so have you seen any efforts in AI to address this type of thing? And this is really common in classrooms too, that, you know, we have lots of languages going on.
Right. The thing is, what AI does in research when it comes to language learning methodologies and language learning research is that we have most data in English. English as a second language, or as for speakers of other languages, or as we call it, English as a foreign language. But the thing is, especially I know this from a colleague, in Roman languages, the data is not reliable enough to really also like try to compare those translations. The thing is, they rather rely on a one-on-one translation, which is not the thing you would like actually want to achieve, of course, because we're not talking about any kind of like plain word-by-word translation. And I really have to say that in the field of EFL, we have the most reliable data. But when it comes to other languages, I really have to say we really have to work on that, because the data is still poor, right? But on the other hand, what you say is when it comes to translation, I think it's a holistic process, because I'm not using translation to say I'm typing in a word into the machine and then I get the sentence. For me, it's like I'm using DeepL, for example, also to show whether my original produced sentence is quite close to the one the machine provides. So actually, I see it not as a like comparing the input and outcome. I rather see it as an accompanying supportive tool that when you're not quite sure whether this is right or wrong, you can use DeepL, for example. I'm about to write an interesting article on how language learners improve essay writing when they comply to an airline using their own skills, but also using Grammarly and DeepL, for example. Yeah, I could have used that with my airline when my luggage wasn't there, right? Yeah, so I would say that it's like we should like try to implement those word by word translations rather as part of a holistic language learning process, so to say, right?
So don't mean translation. I mean like code switching, or when people are using multiple languages. Like you can't give a command have it be partial to Siri and have it be
right. When it comes to code switching, when it comes to interference and all those kind of things, when it comes to compensation strategies while processing the language, I would say here I wouldn't see the whole use of AI anyways, because I would consider code switching as a natural part of like language production anyways. So I would not actually use AI here, because I truly believe in the fact that code switching, interference, compensation strategies as we have in linguistics are a vital part of actively showing you want to produce the language. So we're all talking about accuracy here, fluency before accuracy, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think it's not recognized by AI that people, like if you, AI accepts only monolingual.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, so I was curious if you had ever encountered any
Not that
AI
I know of. No,
that
no,
actually
no.
deals with how people
No.
speak.
Right, no, okay, no.
And if you actually want to totally mess up Google Translate,
Yeah,
start the whole thing in German, put in an English sentence,
and then back
and
again.
back, and
Right,
it will,
yeah.
it will totally
Yeah.
crash down.
Yeah.
Imagine in the human brain how you're able to easily switch between
Yeah.
several
Yeah,
languages,
yeah.
go back and forth, you understand
Trick the system
everything.
here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
a good
he's
point,
simply
yeah.
not able to handle two languages.
Yeah. I know a colleague who does that at school with the students to show them that then the
Right.
system messes us up, right?
Anyway, and I am for AI, but
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
I am
yeah.
totally not afraid.
No, thank you so much.
You guys will have jobs forever. Danke für eine schöne Pause.
Danke, sehr gerne. Alles Gute. Tschüss.
Well,
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks for having me.